My name is Caroline Fletcher, and I'm 29 years old. I fix broken things for a living. Computers, phones, anything with wires. That Tuesday evening, I was eating cereal straight from the box when my tablet lit up beside me. Just one bright flash in my dark kitchen. I finished chewing before I looked. Probably just another customer asking about their laptop repair. But when my eyes landed on the screen, the words felt like ice water down my back. You can't come anymore. Jason says you'll ruin everything. No hello. No sorry. Just that. It came from Mom's account in our family chat. The one with the flower emoji next to the name. I read it 3 times, each time slower than the last. My spoon clattered into the sink. The apartment suddenly felt too quiet, like all the air had been sucked out. But my breathing stayed normal. My heart didn't pound. I just stood there, staring at those cold words glowing in the darkness. Then I walked to my bedroom, opened my computer and started typing. One email after another. To the cake shop. To the tent company. To the lady who makes fancy invitations. Every single one had my signature at the bottom because I was the one who paid. I typed the word cancel so many times it stopped feeling like a real word. When the last cancellation went through, I made a new folder on my desktop. I named it, Not My Problem Anymore. Then I shut the laptop and stared at the closed screen for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. Car honked outside. Everything kept moving like normal, but something inside me had clicked off like a light switch. Betrayal doesn't always come with screaming or broken dishes. Sometimes it arrives in a text message while you're eating cereal. And sometimes you respond by simply stepping back and letting gravity do the rest. If you've ever been pushed away by the people who were supposed to love you most, stick with me. This isn't just about a wedding that didn't happen. It's about what happens when you stop begging to be treated like you matter. Growing up, Jason and I were never equal. Not really. He's 3 years older but always acted like the baby. Mom called him sensitive. Dad called him misunderstood. Called him lucky. When we were little, Jason would forget his homework and Mom would write him notes saying he was sick. I did my homework in the car before school started and nobody noticed. If I forgot something, Dad would say I needed to be more responsible. That became the pattern. Jason's mistakes were accidents. Mine were character flaws. By middle school, I was babysitting neighbors' kids for money while Jason got an allowance for breathing. I saved every dollar in a shoebox under my bed. When I finally bought my own bike, Dad told me not to make Jason feel bad about it. Jason had crashed 2 bikes already. They just bought him another one. High school was more of the same. I worked at a sandwich shop after school and saved for an old car with a dented bumper. Jason borrowed Mom's car and crashed it into a mailbox. They sighed and fixed it, then let him keep driving. Nobody asked how I got to work. College was supposed to be different. I got a scholarship and worked nights at the library. Jason went to 3 different schools and quit all of them. Mom said he was exploring his options. I said he was wasting money. She didn't talk to me for a week after that. Every time I came home for holidays, something would be broken or unpaid. The internet bill, the car insurance. I'd quietly pay it and they'd quietly let me. Thanks came in the form of a nod or a pat on the shoulder, nothing more. When I moved out for good, I thought distance would help. It made things worse. Every phone call was the same. Mom would ask about my day, then casually mention Jason needed help. Money for rent. Money for his phone. Money for gas. I sent it the first few times because that's what family does, right? But family became code for, Caroline fixes everything. The amounts got bigger. The thank yous got smaller. Jason never called me himself. He'd just text got it with no period, no emoji, nothing warm. I started keeping a list in my notes app. Not to be mean, but to remind myself I wasn't imagining it. When people drain you slowly, they make you feel crazy for noticing. 2 years ago, I saved enough to put a down payment on a tiny apartment. 1 bedroom, cracked tiles, but mine. When I showed Dad the keys, he said, "Don't show off in front of your brother. He's having a hard time." I laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. That same week, Jason moved back in with our parents after losing another job. Mom said he needed time to figure things out, like adulthood was a puzzle with missing pieces instead of just effort. I'd scroll through his social media sometimes, trying to understand what everyone else saw. Pictures of parties, trips to the beach, captions about new beginnings. He looked free. I looked tired. Maybe that was my job. To be the steady one in the background while everyone else got to be interesting. The truth is, nobody hid it. The favoritism was right there in every conversation, every paid bill, every time they defended him and questioned me. I wasn't invisible. I was just useful in a different way. By spring, wedding talk filled every call. Mom sounded happier than I'd heard her in years. Jason and his girlfriend Emma wanted a big party at Riverside Gardens, a place with flowers and string lights and a view that looked like a movie. The kind of wedding people save for years to afford. Mom called one afternoon and said, "Honey, we need a tiny favor. Can you put your name down for the garden reservation? Your credit is better and it'll speed things up." Sounded harmless. Just paperwork. Said yes. A week later, a confirmation email landed in my inbox with my name on it. Then another from the bakery. Then the flower shop. When I called Mom, she laughed and said, "Don't worry, sweetie, we'll pay you back right after we get our tax refund." I'd heard that before. But her voice was light and I wanted to believe it. So I kept going. Caterers, DJs, photographers. Every contract came to me. I spent lunch breaks approving orders and signing digital forms. When I mentioned it to Dad, he said, "You're good at this stuff. Let us handle the fun parts." Even Emma started texting me directly with questions, always ending with smiley faces like we were best friends. She didn't know I was paying for everything. Or maybe she did. Some nights I'd sit with my laptop open, looking at a spreadsheet I'd made. Each row had a vendor, an amount, and my name in the payment column. The numbers climbed higher and higher like a mountain I didn't mean to build. When my credit card bill came, the total was $19,284. I stared at it until my eyes blurred. I sent a screenshot to Mom. Her response came an hour later. "We'll fix it after the wedding. Try to enjoy this happy time." Every call after that, she'd change the subject when I brought up money. If I suggested putting some contracts in Jason's name, she said it would confuse things. I called Jason once to talk about it. He didn't answer. The next morning, a text appeared. "Thanks for everything, sis. You're a lifesaver." The words felt like a pat on the head. As the weeks passed, I became part of the machine. I handled the boring parts. They handled the excitement. They talked about our special day and our dream wedding. But the hour never seemed to include me except when another bill showed up. Every payment pulled the invisible thread tighter between what I owed them and what they owed me. In early June, I met with the last vendor, a violinist Emma found on Instagram. She wanted full payment up front. I paid it and watched the confirmation ping into my inbox like the final period on a sentence I never agreed to write. That night, I spread every receipt across my kitchen table. The apartment was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. I lined them up in order. Venue, food, flowers, music. Then I added it all up one more time just to be sure. The total sat at the bottom of the page like an anchor. $19,284. I leaned back and felt something strange. Not anger. Not sadness. Just clarity. They'd call this love. They'd call it helping family. But looking at these numbers, I knew it was something else. It was work I did for free, disguised as kindness. A week before the wedding, my phone buzzed at 11:47 at night. The sound broke the quiet like a rock through glass. I reached over expecting a reminder from Emma about seating charts. Instead, I saw 7 words. "You can't come anymore. Jason says you'll ruin everything." No explanation. No apology. Just that. The message came from Mom. I read it again, slower, hoping I'd misunderstood. But the words didn't change. My chest didn't tighten. My hands didn't shake. The room just got very still. I waited for another message. An explanation, maybe. A follow-up saying it was a mistake. Nothing came. The screen went dark after a few seconds and I sat there in the blue glow of the streetlight outside. My coffee from earlier had gone cold on the counter. The ice maker in the freezer clinked and hummed. Everything kept moving except me. After a while I opened my laptop. My inbox was full of unread emails from vendors, reminders, invoices, all tied to my name. I started with the garden venue, clicked into the reservation system and hit Cancel Booking. A pop-up asked if I was sure, warning the deposit was non-refundable. Clicked yes. Next, the caterer. Please cancel our order immediately. Then the bakery, the florist, the DJ, the photographer. My fingers moved like I was following a recipe. I didn't pause between emails. Didn't second guess. The clicking of keys was the only sound in the apartment, steady like a heartbeat. Each cancellation sent back an automatic reply. Your request has been processed. Watching them stack up felt like erasing pencil marks one stroke at a time. Every trace of me in their perfect day disappeared with each click. I thought about the garden where I'd walked with them months ago. Emma had held up her phone to test the lighting. Mom had said something about all of us working together. All of us. I almost laughed. I kept going until there was nothing left. The wedding website, which I'd helped design, still had my name listed under coordinator. I logged in, deleted it, hit save and refreshed. When I closed the laptop, the clock on the microwave said 1:52 a.m. A dog barked somewhere far away. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the dark screen. The apartment was clean and quiet and empty. I thought about calling someone but didn't know who. Friends would ask questions I didn't want to answer. Mom would probably say this was all for the best. Jason would stay silent because silence was what he did best. For the first time in weeks I felt calm. Not happy. Just settled. Like finishing a long hike and finally sitting down. Every contract, every deposit, every late-night email had been my effort. And now it was all gone. They'd erased me from the celebration first. I just made it official. When the final confirmation arrived, I opened the folder on my desktop one last time. It was still called Jason and Emma Wedding Plans. I right-clicked, selected delete, and watched the bar fill to 100%. The sound was barely there, just a soft whoosh as the trash emptied, but it felt like closing a door. They erased me first. I just turned off the lights. 4 days later, Uncle Pete called. His voice came through rough and careful like someone holding something breakable. Caroline, he said, I saw something you need to know about. Pete was Dad's younger brother, the quiet type who showed up to family dinners but never started arguments. He avoided drama, which made this call unusual. He explained that he'd been added by accident to a group message called Wedding Planning Team. It was supposed to be just the core group. Mom, Dad, Jason, Emma. But someone left his number in from an old thread. For days, messages poured in as they discussed centerpieces and guest lists. Pete didn't pay much attention until he saw something that made him stop. I'm sending it to you now, he said quietly. My phone buzzed. Screenshots appeared one by one. I opened them expecting boring details. The first few were about napkin colors and weather backups. Then I saw my name. From Emma. Just compliment her and say how grateful we are. She'll cover whatever's left. She always does. From Mom. Exactly. She lives for this kind of validation. Let her feel needed. From Jason. Fine. Just keep her away from the actual day. I don't want her making it awkward. My throat went dry. The words weren't screamed or angry. They were casual, like discussing what to eat for lunch. That made it worse. Pete's message came through right after. You don't owe them anything, kiddo. Thought you should see this. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. My hands hovered above the keyboard but no words felt right. Finally I typed, Thanks, Uncle Pete. That was all I could manage. I wasn't angry in the loud way. It was quieter than that. Like air leaking from something that used to hold pressure. I sat there for a few minutes in complete silence. No TV. No music. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. I realized I didn't want revenge. I wanted proof. The kind that doesn't yell but simply shows the truth and lets it speak for itself. So I started gathering everything. I printed every invoice from my email. The garden, the caterer, the flowers, the photographer, even the violinist. Each page had my name as the payer and their names as the beneficiaries. Then I printed the screenshots Pete sent. The words looked sharper on paper. Black ink on white, impossible to ignore. I organized everything into clear folders. One for payments, one for messages, one for cancellations. My desk became a timeline of how much trust costs when you give it to the wrong people. When I finished, I slid the papers into a large manila envelope. On the front, I wrote one word in marker. Evidence. I didn't make extra copies. Didn't plan to mail it anywhere. This wasn't about confrontation. It was about seeing it clearly. I needed to hold the proof to know I hadn't made it up. Uncle Pete called again that evening just to check in. "You doing okay?" he asked, his tone warm but not pitying, which made it easier to answer. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." He paused, then said softly, "Good. Don't let them twist this around later. You know what happened. That's what matters." After we hung up, I put the envelope in my desk drawer. Not hidden, just stored. It sat there like proof that kindness can be taken advantage of, that family can be transactional, that sometimes love is just a word people use when they want something. The room felt lighter somehow. The envelope wasn't for them. It was for me. A reminder that I saw clearly, even when they thought I was blind. The lights at Riverside Gardens looked like something from a fairy tale. Tiny bulbs hung between branches, glowing soft and warm. I arrived alone, uninvited but not ashamed. The envelope in my bag felt heavier than it should. Music drifted through the evening air, light and polite and fake. Inside the reception tent, tables sparkled under candlelight and forced smiles. Jason stood near the front in his black suit, talking to Emma, who froze the second she saw me. The music seemed to lower. People turned. Mom's smile disappeared. Dad set down his drink with a quiet clink. I walked toward them slowly, my shoes tapping against the wooden floor. No one stopped me. The envelope crinkled softly in my hand, louder than any conversation in that tent. I set it down on their table, right between the fancy napkins and the champagne. "You might want to look at this," I said calmly. My voice didn't shake, didn't rise. I pulled out the papers and laid the first one flat. The screenshot from the group chat. My finger traced the words as I read aloud. "She'll cover whatever's left. She always does." Fork dropped. Someone gasped. The tent went silent. No one moved. Emma's face turned white, eyes flicking to Jason, who stared at me like I was a ghost. I turned to him. "This is what you really thought? That I'd keep paying just to be included?" My voice stayed even, but every word landed heavy. "You didn't just take my money. You took my trust." Mom tried to interrupt. "Caroline, this isn't." "Isn't what?" Cut her off. "True. 'Cause it's printed right here. Your words. Your plan. Your little game." I looked directly at her. "I used to think you didn't see me. Now I know you just didn't respect me." Her hands started shaking. Dad finally whispered, "Maybe we should go outside and talk." "There's nothing left to say," I replied. I turned back to Jason. "You're getting married today, and I hope you get exactly what you deserve. But understand this. This isn't a wedding anymore. It's a transaction. Every flower, every song, every smile was bought with someone else's dignity." His mouth opened but nothing came out. "Caroline, please." "No," I said quietly. "You had months to treat me like family. You chose convenience." Around us, the music had stopped completely. The air felt thick, the kind of heavy silence that only truth can create. Emma stepped back, tears starting but not falling. For the first time she looked small. No longer glowing. Just scared. I gathered the rest of the papers and stacked them neatly. "These," I said, tapping the pile, "belong to people who think money replaces love. Keep them. Hang them on your wall if you want. I slid one last page across the table. Total: $19,284. That's what it costs to pretend. Consider it my final gift. As I turned to leave, Mom reached out but stopped halfway. No one followed me. The tent lights flickered once as if even the electricity hesitated. I walked past the tables, past the glowing trees, out into the cool night air where the river reflected the moon. My steps felt lighter, quieter, the kind of quiet that comes when you finally stop carrying something too heavy. From behind me I heard Dad's voice, shaky and low. "What did we do?" No one answered him. I reached the edge of the gardens and looked back once. The tent glowed gold in the distance. Beautiful, empty, temporary. "You didn't just lose money tonight," I whispered to the wind. "You lost me." By morning the whole town was talking. It started online, then moved to coffee shops and grocery store lines. The rehearsal dinner disaster. Everyone had a version of the story. By afternoon someone had posted pictures. Me standing at the table, papers spread across white cloth, faces frozen in shock. At first I stayed home, ignoring calls, even from Uncle Pete. But truth moves fast. Within 2 days it reached Jason's company. He worked for a small tech startup downtown, the kind that prided itself on integrity and team values. When their HR found out he'd been using family accounts without permission for wedding expenses, things unraveled quickly. The company released a statement that Friday. "Jason Fletcher is no longer with our organization following confirmed misuse of personal information." The news spread faster than he could delete his profiles. Emma didn't return to their apartment. By the weekend she'd moved out, leaving unpaid bills and broken plans. Neighbors who used to wave at my parents now walked past without looking. In a small town, reputation is everything. And theirs had just shattered. Meanwhile, I signed a lease for a small place 2 towns over. Near a lake, with big windows and quiet neighbors. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I bought used furniture, set up my desk by the window, and started rebuilding. The first evening there I walked to the lake. Ducks floated by. Joggers passed with earbuds in. No one knew my story. No one saw scandal. Just another woman watching the sunset. Few days later my phone buzzed. Mom's name appeared. I hesitated, then opened it. We were just trying to make things easier for everyone. No apology. Just an excuse wrapped in guilt. I read it twice, then closed the message. My reflection in the window looked calm. Intent doesn't erase harm. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the blinds wider, letting the evening light fill the room. The envelope still sat in my desk drawer. I hadn't opened it since that night. I didn't need to. Some wounds don't heal by revisiting them. They close when you stop checking if they're still there. Over the next weeks, I walked every morning before work. The air smelled like pine and fresh bread from the bakery down the road. Sometimes I'd sit on the dock and sketch. Birds, boats, a kid learning to fish. My hands didn't shake anymore. My chest didn't feel tight. The noise from my old life faded, replaced by the gentle rhythm of my own days. Jason's story became old news. The town found something else to talk about. I never told anyone where I moved. No forwarding address. Just space, silence, and time. The kind of things you can't buy and can't steal once you finally claim them. 2 months later I mailed one last envelope. Thick paper, cream-colored, the kind that feels important. I sealed it carefully and wrote the return address in neat handwriting. Inside were copies of every invoice and a short note. This isn't revenge. It's closure. I didn't expect a response. The act wasn't for them. It was for me. A period at the end of a very long sentence. When I dropped it in the blue mailbox outside the post office, the metal clang sounded final. I didn't check my phone after. There would be no reply. No explosion. Just silence. The kind that belongs to peace. Now my mornings are different. No buzzing phone. No sleepless nights waiting for messages that never mattered. I wake to sunlight through thin curtains, make tea in a yellow mug, and walk barefoot to my little workspace by the lake. Smells like fresh air and possibility. The space isn't fancy. Just a table, a lamp, and one plant I'm determined to keep alive. But it's where I remembered who I was before all the noise. I take small freelance jobs now. Nothing big. Just enough to fill my days with purpose. Some days I play old records while I work. Other days I just listen to the water. When I recorded this video, my hands were steady. It wasn't about them. It wasn't about what happened. It was about what comes next. Thank you, I said into the camera, for listening all the way through. The video showed slow clips of my mornings. Sunlight on water. Steam rising from tea. Sketches of trees and birds. Life teaches us through the things we lose, I said. For me, it wasn't about getting even or making anyone sorry. It was about finally stopping the cycle of trying to earn a place I already deserved. I leaned closer, my voice warm but firm. If you've ever been left out or made to feel small, don't go back just to prove you're enough. Don't wait in rooms that require you to shrink first. Let your peace be the loudest thing you say. Let your absence be the answer they can't argue with.